You are watching or listening to Part 5 with Javad Hashmi. This is Light Up Vichwa podcast, and I hope you have already subscribed to it. And if you haven't, please do so. Thank you.
Yeah. And so I think you're right. I think we need to learn from Christians and Jews who are trying to practice their faith and inculcate that in their families.
Yeah.
Because they are feeling that threat, and we should feel that threat
so
too.
I know you're a thoughtful person, and thought-provoking questions would be so easy for Javad. They're nothing. Nah, they are going to be like, okay, what do you like about yourself?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer. But what I would say is it's both a strength and a weakness that when I want something, nothing can stop me from getting that thing. I will, it was my parents'
you sound
like, if I wanted something and they said no, I was like, no, okay. I'm going to get that thing. That allows me to, everything I've gotten in life is because of that. I mean, when I first started this idea of going back to the university to study religion after going through residency, the vast majority of people, 99%, could never have imagined that my plan all along was to do a PhD and become a professor. And I wouldn't even voice it at that time because it seemed crazy to tell someone.
Yeah.
But I knew that that's what I wanted.
Especially going through the grill of residency. Oh my God.
And now you're making an attending salary. You can just enjoy life. And
yes, I know.
But I said, you know what? Throw that in the garbage. I want this other.
So I mean, I know everybody's unique and different, but you have learned a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I still practice as a physician.
Exactly.
So there is that. But I would say that's what I like about myself is that I can be very dedicated and ambitious. So I do like that.
Good. Anything that you would like to change about yourself? I didn't want to start with that.
So that's related to the previous question, and it's also related to the questions we've been talking about more broadly speaking, which really what we've been talking about is the difference between kind of liberal life and more traditional life. So I grew up in the West, and so I was able to pursue this academic career and hyperfixate on this. But I would say that you always do everything there's always a price associated with everything. So I grew up more individualistic, and I'm maybe balancing that with family and being family oriented. And I'm not just saying that as like sometimes people say this at job interviews to say, oh, okay, this person is just a hard worker, let's take him. No, I'm actually saying it because I study this topic of liberalism and traditionalism, and I very much know that the same things that I see the dangers of, I have become myself those things. So even though I study, I'll give you an example. So even though I study Islam so much in these books, as far as going to the mosque, I mean, I go for Friday prayer, and that's about it. I don't have as much spiritual practice as I could have. So I've become the very thing that I'm warning against because I grew up in this country. So I would say that the one thing that I would want to work on is to become a more balanced human being where you value things like family, you value things like spiritual practice, all of these things. So I do think I'm very much a product of this kind of Western liberalism, which has its positives. But I do think that I see in my own self these qualities and traits. So, for example, I'm not the kind of person that's I go to another city and I have a relative there. I'm not the person who's going to call them up on the phone and say, how are you?
Okay.
I'll be like,
oh, you look like that. I don't know. I thought you are like that, but I guess you're not.
I'm avoid, please. The worst thing on ever for me is a phone call. So these are qualities that I have because I grew up in this way that I wish I could change, because I do realize that it's you're not a full person if you don't embrace these kind of things. And this is
acknowledging is a big thing. So do you think you can change?
To an extent, I would say. I think that we're built some way that it's very hard to change. So at some point in time, you just have to learn to accept somebody for who they are. And in marriage, for example, that's my wife is much more family oriented, much more social than I am. And at the end of the day, I think now, 10 years down the line, she's accepted who I am, and that is how he is. So.
So does she give in, or do you ever also balance with her? Like,
it's always going to be me who gives in, but
I have to talk to her now privately.
She might say differently. I would say that I realize that I need to be more human, and so when she tells me that I really need to do something, then I'm like, okay, all right, let's do that thing.
Okay. Very interesting, Javad. So you have found a purpose in your life, I would say.
I would say yes. I think I do believe that there's a divine plan, and I think that I feel, and this, and I encourage people to have these delusions of grandeur. And so what I'm going to say will sound like a delusion of grandeur, but that's how you accomplish things in life, is by having those delusions. And so I think I was sent down on this earth to do what I'm doing right now, which is not medicine. So the reason why I can't do medicine, the reason why I'm so miserable working as a physician, is not because it's anything in medicine that I dislike. I would hate other jobs much more, maybe, right? Like, I know that there are much more difficult jobs. There are jobs where you have to work as a construction worker where I would be miserable. But it doesn't matter what this job was. If I wasn't meant to do this, I feel like it's taking away time from the thing that I was meant to do. And I really, truly believe that. So I think when it comes to this issue that I'm studying, I feel like I was sent down on earth to do it, which is specifically, I think we're struggling with how to balance our religion, Islam, with modernity. And I think this is the area where I see myself kind of digging my head in and trying to help with this, answer this question. Now, not one person is not going to have the answer to this, but I do think, I have an interest in this, and this is where I think I can bring some benefit to the world, and that's the most you can hope for.
So
it's what we should teach our children to do, is not go for where the money is, but where you think you can actually benefit the world and leave something. And I think, for example, like what you're doing with this podcast, you're someone this is not a very traditional thing to do, to have a podcast like this. This is very much going outside of the lines. And that's what I encourage is people to do in our community, because you're putting out something in the world. This podcast, you're putting it out into the world. Whereas if you just did a regular 9-to-5 job, maybe your work doesn't have any effect on the world. If you're just busy, I make fun of my friends in tech a little bit. They spend all this time, and what do? They design like a button that's on a website that nobody uses. I'm like, maybe you can put something out in the world.
Don't they beat you for that?
My wife's in tech, so she'll beat me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you for appreciating. So how important is money for you at this time?
So money is very important. And money is important because it's freedom. That's the reason why. And unfortunately, one of the downsides of living in America is the higher education, the way the tuitions are sky high. And so I want to tell people to go study whatever you want, and that's what I have said. But then you also get saddled with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And debt is slavery. And when you're in debt, then you are forced to do a job that's the only reason why I have to work so much in the hospital is because of all of not only debt, but also you get what's called golden handcuffs. Your friends drive certain cars, it all has an effect on you, even if you don't want it to have it.
Yep.
And so I do think money would be liberating. If I wish that I always wish that some old guy somewhere is going to see my work and say, you know what, I'm going to give my will and I'm going to will $1 billion.
That's a good.
And then I could quit my hospital job and I could just study ancient books and put stuff out there. And so I do think money is important. And that's why I think it is important for people in our community who become entrepreneurs and make a lot of money. I have no problem with that. I think that's very important to do. But then if you're going to do that, then invest that money into the community and invest that not only in charitable works. We do a great job of that. Muslims do a great job.
Yeah, but
one thing we don't do is invest in think tanks, in cultural developments, institutions. So that's really,
that's
I
very
think,
important.
You know, I say this somewhat bitterly. I say that people like me and other people who are interested in this thing. So I have a friend. He's a professor now. He's a young professor. He just graduated from Harvard. He's a professor now at a small university. Honestly, he makes less than a manager would make at a fast food chain. So that is that shows how little we value intellectual thought. I mean, and I know this person personally. He is studying some amazing ideas and he's creating knowledge. We don't value knowledge, so we pay somebody millions of dollars to put a ball into a round hoop. We pay millions of dollars, but we don't pay people who are thinking about philosophy, religion, humanity, the thing that us human being. We don't value. So so the answer is it is very important, but it's important not to fixate on it. So that's why I do think those traditional religious values of a level of asceticism, in the sense of not getting into the glitz and the glamour, because that is also slavery. Then to buy big cars, big houses, you're going to be working till you're dead then, and you won't be able to do those things that you were actually meant to do on earth. So money is important, but it's only a means. It's not the end. So that's what I say.
So what is the value of gratitude? Now we are at the last leg of questions.
It's very related to the money question, I think. Here again, those traditional Islamic values are important. Gratitude is something that we don't really value too much in the West, or it's not a strong emphasis on it. So you have people who make, and as a physician, I see it, by the way, because I have colleagues who make lots of money. I remember this one incident, actually. We were residents, so we were not making lots of money, but residents know they're going to make a lot of money. And we were paying for our food in the cafeteria, and my colleague, who's also a resident, was complaining about how bad our jobs are and how little money we make. And he wasn't even aware, and the cashier, that's the word I'm looking for. The cashier probably works 2-3 jobs and has a much worse lifestyle, and not even a promise of making a lot of money. And yet this person didn't even think about that and was just so thinking about themselves. And I think the reason is because if you don't come from a religious worldview, there's no reason to think that anything that you've achieved in life is anything but your own making. So maybe that's too strong of a statement, but what I would say is that even if you study, I study Western liberal philosophy. John Locke, who's my favorite Western philosopher, he was actually a Christian. Many people don't know that. So he was a very believing Christian. He actually talks about, so if you have people who are very libertarian, who are conservative libertarian, they don't want to give any of their money in taxes for social welfare programs. And the reason is, if you talk to many of them, they are very wealthy, or they come from wealthy families, they make a lot of money, they've worked hard in their life, they've made a lot of money. But the recurring theme that you hear from them is, I worked very hard, I earned it, I deserve it. This is the mentality. And I think if you come from a religious worldview, and so John Locke was this religious person, he said, no, your life and your property are not yours in that sense. In the sense they are, God has a control over your life, and he's the one, it is your legal property, but the people who are under you have a right to it. And so that's what I would say. So the point, though, is if you have a religious worldview, then you know that you should be grateful for everything that you have, and you should be constantly looking at that. And every day, actually, at night when you go to sleep, it's a good idea to think, what am I grateful for? And what you find is that people who do that actually become happier. So even though you're being humble and you're not saying, I did this, I did that, I'm the one. Like for me, for example, I know that I studied at these Ivy League schools, and I did this, I did that. But I myself know that I came from a very privileged background. My father had the chance to come to America at a young age. He established himself. He was affluent enough that I messed up a few times, and he allowed me new opportunities, and I'm grateful for him for that. Other people that I meet had much tougher lives, and they weren't able to do that. So it's not that I'm so much smarter than them. It's the fact that I was given all of these blessings that allowed me to do these things. And so I think gratitude is extremely important, and that's a traditional value that's kind of out the door in a lot of Western countries that we should kind of bring back. But, yeah.
Thank you. Very nice. Very good. All right. Any message of hope?
I think we should always have a hope in our, I've heard, I'm not sure if it's accurate, but I've heard that the Arabic name for Satan, Iblis, comes from the same root as to despair. And it's because he despaired of God's mercy.
Yeah.
And I think we Muslims, especially Pakistanis, in general, it's a generalization, but we have this despair kind of mentality when it comes to our country, the state of our religion, the halat, as you can say, the condition of our people. And I think there's even a saying, whether it's accurate or historically true or not is a different story, but that whoever says that the people is doomed is himself doomed. The reason is, once you think that you're doomed and you have no hope, then there's no chance of you actually going in that direction and trying to improve, like going in a direction of recovery. So I have hope. I think things will improve. I think the Islamic world today, that's what I'm thinking about when I'm answering this question. It's obviously we're in our very dark times right now. Europe had their wars of religion. We're in those right now. And it can look really bleak and bad, but I look at certain things and I actually do see progress. And I think we need to look at the long lens of history. And when we look at the long lens of history, we can actually see, people ask this question, when is the Islamic Reformation going to happen?
Yeah.
I answer, you're witnessing it right now. That's if you step back and look at it. So I am very hopeful that things will improve.
Okay.
And I think we should be hopeful.
Yep. Thank you for listening or watching part 5 with Javad Hashmi. Hope you will tune in for the last episode with him next week. See you next week. Thanks.